We have been hearing quite a lot about the promise of new technologies, whether it's AI or other smart systems. But we really want to dig deeper into what are, in practical ways, what are the opportunities, what are the challenges in adopting, scaling up the innovation, and what can be done about it. So maybe let me kick off with you, Sharon. Where, in your view, is the sort of where do you see the biggest impact of new technologies? Is it the sort of some of the lower hanging fruits that we were hearing about, or is it the sort of bigger picture? Where do you see the biggest impact right now?
I actually think it's both. We do need both. I mean, we've heard about the huge investment in England and Wales, 104 billion. So what we really need is a big ambition around that as well. Right. And sometimes it's not always about technology, just to say that up front. We've got projects like the Thames Tideway and the SPA project in the Anglian region, taking water from the north of the region into the east. So sometimes it's just about really big pipes going into the right places. So we know how to do that. It doesn't necessarily need that much technological innovation around it. But where can technology really make a difference? I think, we've already heard today around data collection and monitoring and optimizing processes as well. There's been a little bit about processes around sewage treatment, but we've not really talked about that today so far. So looking at the smaller end, so, we've heard about smart meters. They're really important. They help customers manage their own consumption. But they also help water companies really spot where leaks are. And so we can really identify those really quickly and then get and address them and fix them quickly. So they're a small intervention, but we have to do it at scale. So over the next AMP period, we'll be installing around 10 million of those smart meters. And if you haven't got a smart meter, please contact your water company who'll be able to install one for you, would be my plea. The second part is really about reducing process emissions. So I'm a sustainability lead, so I want to talk about carbon a little bit more and greenhouse gases. So the industry produces around 2% of UK emissions. That's actually increased in the last week because of the emissions factors that have been applied. So last week it was 1%, this week it's 2%. We're not producing any more emissions, it's just the way the emissions factors work. So what we're talking about there are greenhouse gases, so things like methane and nitrous oxide. So during our sewage treatment, these gases are produced and they've really just been vented into the atmosphere previously, and they're much, much more powerful greenhouse gases than carbon, for example. So at Severn Trent, we are looking at 300 million investment, really on behalf of the UK industry. We're trialling new technologies in our sewage treatment works to look at how we can really reduce those process emissions. My last point, I would say, is innovation isn't always about technology. So we can also use things like nature-based solutions. So they are innovative approaches, but they are totally different in terms of identifying technology, trialing technology in quite controlled environments. Nature-based solutions really have to be the right solution in the right place. And we'll come on to talk about some of the challenges of that, I'm sure.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's a great point. And we will want to discuss also the challenges and the particularly when it comes to scaling, right? And nature-based solution, how can they be scaled, et cetera. So that's great. Florian, one of the big challenges, sort of specific challenges that we have heard a little bit about is PFAS. From your perspective, obviously, that's something that you focus on. Can you just tell us what the problem is and then really how does the sort of new technology help you address it?
So first of all, PFAS, it's let's call it the invisible risk we have in water. So you don't see it, you don't smell it, you don't taste it. So you can maybe ignore it. And this is what we saw over the last decades, probably. Knowing about the risks, there were some health studies around already. So at the end, we find it everywhere in the environment. We find it in food, we find it in our bodies and so on. And at the end, it causes cancer and other health influencing things. And yeah, since now we have new regulations in place here in Europe, and I would say the industry gets a bit crazy about it. So to find solutions, and we are dedicated really to remove PFAS from water. So we are a classical startup in this way, and invented an absorber resin. So it's an absorber platform technology, and one part is PFAS removal. And this sounds not very, let's say, new, but what we are doing is to integrate it into filter cartridges, because our resin can remove the PFAS in seconds. And if you compare to other technologies, it takes minutes, half an hour for activated carbon, for example, to bind the PFAS accordingly. So, and this is new, and we bring something new to the market. And this is what the challenge is, because at a sudden everybody looks for a solution, and using old technologies and combine it and so on. So let's say innovation is hard to place in this business.
Yeah, absolutely. But it's also in the case where you have a sort of very clear, sort of proven product, right? But then the scaling is a challenge. So we'll address that in just a second. But David, sort of from your perspective, sort of across the sector, where do you see the sort of most activity and the most promising innovation taking place and being really adopted?
Probably in Europe, I see a so-called quaternary treatment, fourth-stage sewage treatment, which is to strip out cosmetic and pharmaceutical residue. The European Union has raced ahead, and I think is quite a bit further advanced than the United Kingdom in that regard. So there's a lot of innovation around how that is done. Activated carbon and so on can be used. There's the stuff that we've heard before around net zero in this country, where we are leading the world along with Melbourne Water and Aarhus Water in Denmark, despite the fact that net zero clue in the adjective net. And the government's current carbon budget, despite the emissions factors changed last week, allowing carbon emissions beyond 2050 for water. I think we're going to see a lot of innovation there. But really, the thing that would enable us to have more innovation, I think, is if we had the regulatory change occur faster than we're currently seeing. The kind of recommendations that were accepted in large part last year are still yet to be implemented. And that is what I think is not helping us have as much innovation as we should. The more we have certainty around which way the government wishes to go regarding that, then it's going to give investors confidence to create the environment where we will have more innovation being stimulated. So I suppose the wastewater side, emissions, drinking water itself, there's less innovation, I would say, because we're already extremely advanced. I mean, we have in this country joint highest standard drinking water on the planet, and that's because of a lot of innovation that's been happened already.
Right, absolutely, and we'll dig deeper into the revamping of regulatory system. But before that, Carolyn, where do you sort of see the most powerful case for sort of return on investment, the ROI, that also sort of resonates at a strategy level?
I think probably culture change is where we're going to get the most return on investment. So thinking differently about some of the water management challenges that we have. So, excuse me. So, for example, we've introduced at South West Water a Green First framework. Okay. Which is a culture change program to encourage colleagues who are traditionally engineers, accountants. They think in a certain way, they're trained in a certain way, to encourage them to think differently about the solution that they're going to put in. And we've put that at the front end of decision-making processes in an attempt to change the culture across the organisation. So in terms of scalability of innovation, unless you give people permission to think differently within the regulatory frameworks, but also within traditional disciplines, I don't think you're necessarily going to get the scale of change that's required. So that's why we're doing a culture change program alongside all the other changes that we're implementing.
Absolutely. So besides the sort of adoption of technology, it's the cultural side of things. Absolutely. And Claire, you have mentioned, or you've talked about before, about system-wide innovation. What does that look like in practice? Do you have any examples of where that actually, has taken place?
Well, so I think there are two things here. There's scale and then there's system. Okay. And when we look at innovation, often you find that innovation is applied on very specific areas. And sometimes you're missing the full picture. And I think what we need to do is we need to look at a bigger picture. And I'll give an example in a minute. And not only that, when we're looking at the system, we often kind of look at the pipes and then we look at the treatment works and siloed. We need to look at the whole system together. And then I believe that you start to see the real value. And everybody's talking about AI. And I want to give you an example of where we as a technology company worked with a really interesting innovation project. And that was something called Center. And it was a Horizon 2020 innovation project. And what it does is it had a whole load of gates that you put into your wastewater system. And those gates are communicating with each other using something called fuzzy logic. Okay. And what it's doing is it's making the most of the storage within the wastewater system. Now, the thing is that it's very difficult to prove how it's going to work. You can't just have one gate, you've got to have multiple gates, and wastewater systems are pretty complex. So the wastewater community came to us as a whole, at Innovise and said, look, can you incorporate this logic into your technology? Which we did. So it was put in InfoWorks ICM as a technology. It's a hydraulic modeling product. And what that meant was that we could scale. So people could look like, not just in this area here, look as a whole. What if we put those gates here, what impact is it going to have? So that enabled that bit of technology to scale up, and they can reduce spill volumes by up to about 25%. And there've been a number of projects looking at that. But then when we look at system, that's in the network, but effectively all those flows are going to go to a treatment works, aren't they? And at that treatment works, if you can use that hydraulic model in a forecasting sense, so you can actually predict what flows are going to come to the treatment works, then you can start to operate your treatment works so much better. You can do energy optimization, you can do your chemical dosing, you can preserve your assets better, and you could plan better for those flows that are going to come to those treatment works so you can store those flows better. So we're looking the system, look at the system, look at bigger scale. Same with the nature-based solutions. You can have a site-specific, look at it as a whole, and then I think you really start to understand what those values are.
Right. But so even at the sort of the question of scale, you need that collaboration, right? You said that it's a people that came together.
Absolutely. And I love that. And I love the way that people came to the technology fair and we said, absolutely, of course we'll incorporate it. And I think that's something that, technology looks like it's kind of siloed and it's doing its own thing. No, we rely on you. We rely on you to define, what we need to put in there to help with the outcomes that you're looking for.
And then at the system level, it's even broader, right? You need a broader set of stakeholders
absolutely
to come together. So that's a sort of cross-sectoral, cross-stakeholder collaboration. Sharon, in your view, what are the sort of biggest challenges that you face in terms of scaling or even, contributing to the system?
Yeah, sure. We've got a big investment. There's a lot to do. Mm-hmm. So cost does come into it. You have to be spending our money in the right places for sure. But there's other things as well. So an investment at that scale brings challenges, again, skills and workforce, and making sure we've got a supply chain that can deliver alongside us as well. So one of the things that the Secretary of State actually mentioned this morning, big plug, was our Severn Trent Academy, which we're really proud of at Severn Trent. It's really bringing through, the talent that we need in our business to deliver some of these things. And I think, touching on what you said, David, around we're a cautious industry and we've had to be, we're delivering, a precious service. So as companies, we're cautious and, we need to do the right thing, but we've also seen that caution come through from the regulators, both the Environment Agency and Ofwat, in terms of what we can spend our money on. That is changing. I think there is a recognition. I think, DEFRA's Innovation Fund is really helping to change the dial a little bit on that for sure. And so we need to trial technologies, and people have said today that can take quite a long time to bring new technologies through. And I mentioned the process emission technology that we're working on in our sewage treatment works. I mean, sewage treatment works are little, biological entities of themselves. So you can trial something in there, you can see how it works, but to replicate that across every single sewage treatment works, which are all slightly different because of their scale, their biology, and their chemistry, takes time to do that. And we're doing things like having digital twins. We've heard all about digital twins today, to help us optimize that processes, but also collaboration. So absolutely sharing all of that information, not just across the UK, but working globally with Australian water companies and across Europe as well, so that we can all benefit from that learning as we go. And just finally returning to nature-based solutions, that absolutely needs collaboration. It has to be done on a local level. Really understanding who the key players is a complex thing in itself. And bringing together those people to understand what needs to be done. It's about timing. It's about the right solution in the right place. We can't just say, we'll do a nature-based solution here and expect it's going to work. And that's really about that catchment-based planning. And, we really need to do more of that going forward.
Absolutely. So again, just a question of collaboration and not just in the sector, but across sectors, across countries, even regions. So, Carolyn, in your view, what does the sort of good collaboration look like? Do you have a sort of an example? What enables it? What makes it tick? What makes it work?
My favourite collaboration at the moment in the Southwest is the Southwest Peatland Partnership. It's one of the reasons why I went from running a wildlife trust to coming into a water company. And it's there's a lot of trust between partners. There's a lot of give and take. Everyone puts their money on the table. Then the governance follows. It's a really effective partnership. We've restored over 5,000 hectares of peatland across different uplands. And we do that as a water company because restoring, having healthy peatlands means that you're slowing the flow of water, which improves the water quality and brings other benefits as well, biodiversity, natural flood management. So everyone around that table gets something out of being in that partnership, whether it's the biodiversity benefit or the water quality benefit in the case of the water company. But it's supported by a lot of trust, and it's supported by a lot of food and drink from the area as well. We do a lot of work in the dark, in the evening, in a pub, for example, and developing those human
sound like work.
But seriously, people work with people, don't they?
Right.
So you've got to have those trusting relationships and bonds, otherwise you're not going to go anywhere. So trust is really important.
Building of trust across the sort of group of stakeholders. Yeah. And I feel like that for the nature-based solutions, especially if there are, the shared benefits or the co-benefits, right? That's the one area that probably helps to develop that trust between actors. So, just to touch on, David, the sort of question of regulatory system, and you've mentioned that there sort of, needs to be a pretty significant change, and we have heard about, the system changing quite a lot and big plans. But in your view, what are the most critical changes that you would like to see that would help?
Two things. As Sir John kind of pointed out in his 465-page report last year, the system is completely broken. It's not fit for purpose, and that's primarily because we've had governments perhaps react rationally by delegating what are political choices to regulators. So whether we should have a certain standard of investment versus a certain bill impact is really a political question. What sort of drinking water do we want? What sort of environment do we want? How much are we prepared to pay for it? These are decisions generally that we would want democratically accountable ministers to take, but they've been delegated to a complicated, confusing and inconsistent array of regulators. And the easiest thing for them to have done over decades is to get bills down. They've done that very, very well. And the price has been paid by the environment and the age of our assets, which are increasingly failing, and now having to play catch up. So we need the strategy, first of all, set by the government to tell us what it wants. knowing how much it will cost. And then we need the regulator, singular, to be set up as fast as it can so that it can get on and deliver that. And the sooner we get that, the better for society, the economy, and the environment. But the government is taking a bit of time. So the more it can accelerate its efforts, the better.
And do you see that sort of? Are you hopeful that we are at least heading to the right direction?
Well, the Secretary of State talked about the transition plan, which we hope will give answers to many of the outstanding questions, which are pretty large, like how many of the 15,000 people who work in the Environment Agency are going to move into the new regulator? What functions will it have? These questions are completely unresolved as yet. She said that would be coming soon, so we hope that's right. But how hopeful am I? Well, it's hard not to be a little bit despondent. I mean, if we have a change of Prime Minister and another Environment Secretary, which, if one reads the betting markets, seems more probable than not, then I fear it will drag on. And that would be a big shame because people really want this to work. We think about 50 members of Parliament lost their seats because of water and no other issue at the last election. And the 50 people who replace them are going to lose their seats unless this is fixed. Right. It doesn't take much to get people in a focus group talking about how angry they are about the country in general and in water in particular. So there's an urgent need to fix this and fix it soon.
Absolutely. And do you by any chance have a sort of maybe not if example of either a country or a region or a sort of regulatory framework where you see that has those changes that you would like to see? Are there any sort of examples?
Well, I mean, Water UK, clues in the name, we represent all the companies of the whole of the United Kingdom. And I have to say, Scotland, I think, does this pretty well. They have had a clear direction from its government about the type of environment that it wants and the price it's prepared to pay for that. And that stability of political direction has, I think, meant more consistent actions by its regulator and the water company there. So that's a pretty useful model, I think, and kind of cited it a fair bit in his report. I think the Netherlands does this reasonably well, and Denmark does too.
Okay, fantastic. And Florian, in your perspective, what would you like to see either from the utilities or regulators to really help you deploy and scale up?
Yes, as a startup, it's about trust. We heard it already. So to get awareness, to get confidence, to get references and so on, to create the trust at the end. I give a short example. It's a hotspot in Germany. It's in Rastatt, where you have a lot of PFAS in the groundwater. And the water utilities were forced to remove it. So, and they spent for activated carbon plant 25 million. Yeah, and they spent per year around about €500,000 to remove a kilogram of PFAS per year, something like this. Oh. So the costs are very high. So, and knowing this, this room would be full of carbon to treat it for 50,000 people. So it's not a big water utilities, I have to say. So knowing that our solution would fit here on the stage, and costs probably a fifth of it. So this is the situation. From our point of view, we made our homework. We know that's not leaching into the water, something. We know that we can remove it and so on. We know how to destruct later on PFAS. So now it's coming to the point is now it takes for us 2 more years roundabout to get all the regulations done from our side. So first testings and paperwork, we have to put it to the ministries and so on. And at the end, it's saving money for the society by introducing innovations. And we need now money to do it in Germany, to do it in the UK, in France, and so on. We have to do it everywhere. So harmonizing the regulations would be a very good step. That's one. And the other is to speed up the processes. Why 2 years? We know it after a couple of, let's say, months, if it works or not, if there's a risk for a health risk from our material. We know the health risk from PFAS, so we remove it. But is there a health risk from our materials? This is what is proven by the authorities. So it takes around about 2 years. So that means we have to be financed another 2 years. And we know we can save money for all of us.
Right. So the sort of standardization and speed, right? To help you with
would be very
research.
beneficial for us. Yeah.
Wonderful. And Claire, you just sort of talked about obviously the sort of scaling and the system change and system-wide innovation. What is the sort of one concrete thing or a couple of things that you really would like to sort of see taking place, changing, whether it's at the company level, but also more that sort of structural level?
Yeah, so one thing about innovation is that ultimately it can lead to a new type of asset. So maybe it's a new flow control, maybe it's a new pump. Okay, now one thing that we've all heard about is the importance of the water utilities knowing their asset data. So how are you going to scale it? How are you going to scale it? Well, if it's been successful, then the first thing is that you need to ensure that operations are happy to operate that asset. You need to make sure that commercial is on board with it and the chief engineer. And once you have that, that's big progress. Now, the next thing is to ensure that your designers have that asset as part of their model library. And the reason is because once it's in the early stages and in their model library, then you start to follow the digital thread of data from your design to your construction and then your handover to operations. But most importantly is that asset data needs to go into your enterprise asset management system, whether that's SAP, whether that's Maximo or whatever system you have. It needs to be recorded there because if you have delay, and that is a problem, then those assets do have a warranty period, for example, and you may not meet that warranty period should they fail. Sometimes you get manufacturing failures with them. You will not be within that warranty period because it's not known about, because it's not on your enterprise asset management system. So there has to be a workflow and it has to enrich that enterprise asset management system for it to be effectively maintained and to have a record of where that asset is.
Right. And that comes at a sort of company level? Or
Yeah, that would come at a company level.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And then can that be sort of replicated or can that be sort of standardized or made into a sort of, is it a cultural change or is it a change of?
It's so cultural change is always the big thing. But I would say once it's in the model library, then it's a component as part of a solution. Yeah. So, I mean, it's there in the model
Once
library.
it works.
It's been approved by everybody who's going to operate it and the chief engineer and commercial. So it's kind of, you're in a winning situation from your planning stage. And I think that makes a considerable difference in terms of maturing our customers and ensuring that they have that rich asset data
Absolutely.
they're going to be maintaining.
Wonderful. And we are over time, but I want to see if there is any one sort of pressing question. Okay, if not, then I want to thank the panel. Thank you so much. This has been a fantastic conversation. Thank you, Florian, Carolyn, David, Sharon.